Hey guys, I'm here. I just got back from seeing Captain America Brave New World, and I enjoyed it. I've seen a lot of people have been pretty mixed on it, even saying, like some of the only praises I've really seen up until this point is people calling it average, mid, things like that. Nothing more than that, not too much, or just straight dogging on it. I went into it, as I do with everything, completely open mind, no expectations, and like I said before many times, even in the trailer reactions, originally this movie, when it was announced, like many of the things that came out after Endgame, or at least that was announced after Endgame, I was like, I'm gonna see it, but there was absolutely nothing I was like really hungry for, excited for. Spider-Man No Way Home aside, Shang-Chi was the last film I really enjoyed. As far as the upcoming slate, the only thing I'm looking forward to, and this even includes the Avengers films that have been announced, is Daredevil. Like, that's the only thing I'm actually excited for. So I sat down for this movie, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. Anthony Mackie and Danny Ramirez did a fantastic job carrying this film. They're definitely our focal point, obviously, titular character and all that. And, it very much so is a very organic sequel to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, as well as, and maybe even more so, is this an Incredible Hulk sequel? Like, if there was any question about the canonicity of that film, that is 100% resolved here on multiple fronts. And with Harrison Ford coming in here to replace William Hurt as Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, who is now running for president and is kind of at the center of all of the conflict, he also does a fantastic job in this, just kind of coming in and really putting his own spin on the character, but it very much so feels like the Ross that we've known up until this point, with the new face, which of course we saw in the trailer that they kind of poke fun of, with him shaving the mustache, but like, I love the new look. Coming off the heels of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, obviously that was Sam wrestling with the fact that Cap left him the shield. And by the end of that show, him accepting that's the reality of the situation. Now, it's just really him trying to live up to that. He's accepted the role. He's accepted the responsibility. He's wielding the shield, the title, all of it, and standing up for his autonomy, what he believes in. He's in a very complicated spot when, quite obviously, given the history, especially between him and Ross. And I like the way they played on that. All of the scene work with Carl Lumbly in this, because, who's just phenomenal in his own right. There's some really heart-wrenching scenes between the two of them, and their chemistry is just so powerful. I really enjoyed that. Again, I think our core cast of characters was really strong, especially with, Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres, who's coming in here to kind of follow in his footsteps. I really enjoyed what this was doing with the characters, kind of setting the stage for this new world we're stepping into, as well as this kind of handoff point. Like, if anything, this feels like a movie we needed a long time ago in these phases. This should have come out, I think, closer to the end of Endgame and stuff like that. I feel like this movie, should have been like the stepping stone into everything else that was coming next. Really does feel like a delayed response to all of that, and that's just the problem with the phases themselves and not really the fault of the film. As for the movie itself, it definitely feels like a mix of Winter Soldier meets kind of Top Gun, especially with the Rogue thing, and then with the set piece at the Celestial's head. There's like an aerial combat sequence all throughout that was really well done. Honestly, I found it quite gripping, especially with the way that Sam is navigating this situation with his abilities, with his tech and all this kind of stuff. And also the fact that he's doing all this, obviously with his suit, his upgrades, his wings and all that kind of stuff, the Wakandan technology and the vibranium that kind of lines his suit and whatnot, is kind of making up a little bit for the gap and the fact that he's still not taking the super soldier serum. And they do play with that about whether or not he should. But his relationship with Joaquin Torres was a really strong part of this film, and seeing him kind of take on his own protege, him really kind of stepping into that role in the way that kind of that Captain America was for him. I really really enjoyed all of that. I'm not going to go into too many spoilers as far as like the main plot or anything like that, but the primary antagonist, I will say, because I don't know, I didn't watch the last trailer that came out for this. You know, I only covered what we reacted to in here, and there's some very loose things in the news that I kind of kept up with, so I'm not exactly sure what is and is not relatively public knowledge, so I'm just going to kind of be vague as all hell as much as possible here. The villain is basically playing this political chess game from the shadows, and the way that all unfolds is really interesting. I like the way that they play on it. I will say the performance, and maybe it's not so much the performance itself, but maybe the dialogue. There's just some lines with our main antagonist that just feels so hokey, eye-rollingly so. There's a couple of moments throughout the film as well where it has kind of that Netflix thing that they've been instilling and injecting into a lot of their projects in recent years, where they're over-explaining what you're literally watching. Not always the case, but there was like a line or two in some of the action sequences where they are just spelling out unnecessarily what they're doing and what their goal is, what they're trying to achieve or whatever, when if you're just watching the movie, it's obvious, like red neon light signs obvious. I mean, it wasn't a lot. It didn't happen all the time, but there was just a couple moments where it was just that line didn't need to exist if you're actually watching the film. So I don't know if that was a conscious decision in that way or not, or they literally think the audience is too dumb to understand and keep up with what's going on. Because as far as following the story, honestly, I didn't have any issues. And I like the way that it all kind of unraveled. I like the progression of everything. I think everything kind of worked pretty well. Until, I will say, the resolution to the third act conflict, the final conflict of the film. I will say, because they set the precedent that the resolution shouldn't have worked, and then it does, and it feels insanely abrupt, as if they couldn't think of another way to get out of the situation, even though I was literally writing one on my head, which I can't go into. There was a resolution there that could have resolved this. That was not the situation that they went with. But I understand why they went with it. It's just, had they not set up the opposite earlier in that scene, then it wouldn't have been a huge issue. Outside of the aerial scene, a lot of the hand-to-hand combat was fine. It's no Winter Soldier. It's fine. It's serviceable. But that's not what I found intriguing or enthralling with this film. It was quite literally the narrative, the thriller aspect of it, the mystery, the unraveling of this web. I really, really enjoyed all of that, as well as the visuals, except for, I'll say again, yet again, this is a common Marvel problem. I don't know the way around this. There's just a couple of scenes that are quite clearly Anthony Mackie on a green screen, like very, very clearly. So I don't know if this is like a rushed out kind of project kind of feel, or what, more than likely, knowing how things have kind of gone here recently. But, you know, there's a couple characters in here that I'm not exactly sure what they're supposed to be outside of like the names that they were given in the film. There is this Ruth character that I don't know anything about that suits up at one point, kinda, more like puts on like a leather jacket that is vibrantly colored. I have no idea who that was supposed to be. They never gave this person a code name whatsoever. Then there's Giancarlo Esposito's character, Sidewinder, who has a part to play in this whole thing. It's Giancarlo Esposito. He's doing a killer job in it as well with what he's given. I feel like this movie definitely should have came out maybe right after the Eternals, maybe not so far late in the game, but I thought this was one of the better MCU films that have come out since Endgame. Considering how kind of rocky a couple things have been after all of that, this definitely like rises above most of the herd. As far as stacking up with like the greater MCU as a whole, I'd put it in the upper half for sure. I really like what they're setting up with these characters, and I'm excited to see what they do with them. But that's my thoughts. What are yours? Sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We're carrying the conversation after the video. Make sure to stick around for more reviews and reactions. And before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends. May share your course, Scott, Rubber, Guiano, Jeffrey L, Jake Cottrell, Eric Official, Casey Wood, Russell Crockett, and Watchtower. Thank you guys so much for continued support and everybody who's been supporting the channel along the way. But that's this video, guys. So I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody.